Welcome to my World History Notes, where I read from the book that I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history. A Bible believer looks at world history. You can find it on lulu.com, amazon.com, or the Bible Baptist Bookstore, or just follow me here. Excuse me. I draw conclusions about world history. You don't have to agree with my conclusions, but certainly you want to know about some of the people that I talk about and places, events, and concepts, and even more than that to be conversant in world history. What I'm doing is just a surface survey, just to give the regular person like myself some kind of a base to start from. So let's begin. Today, we'll continue. Marcus Aurelius ruled between 162 and 165. From 162 to 165, a great victory against the Parthians by Rome ended in the plague infesting the returning troops, and vast areas of the empire being depopulated in the death that followed. Aurelius spent a great deal of time in the field quelling revolts along the Danube, and eventually, accompanied by his son, Commodus, died, perhaps near present-day Vienna, Austria. Commodus's reign, excuse me, from 180 to 192 was a murderous nightmare by secular standards, although he was much more tolerant of Christians than was his father. He was finally assassinated by his Praetorian Guard. There was a great struggle for the throne until Septimus Severus took control in 193. He had to fight a war with the Parthian ruler Vologases IV, after which he put down revolts in Britain, where he died, possibly at present day York. Moving forward, we find Emperor Alexander Severus from 222 to 235, who fought against the founder of the new Persian Sassanid Empire, Ardashir I. The emperor was murdered by the tribune Maximinus, noted as a giant of a man, illiterate and thuggish. Chaos in the empire ensued, wars, revolts, and the rise of enemies against Rome were beginning to steamroll. There were incursions by barbarians, notably Goths and Franks. There were Gothic pirates in the Black Sea. Um, Finally, the empire achieved a sort of revival in 268 until about 305, with many revolts successfully quelled and building projects such as the reconstruction of the walls of Rome going forward. A revolt in Egypt was brutally put down. The emperors under this revival were Illyrian, from an area comprising the Western Balkan mountains of northern Greece, represented by the Hallstatt culture early on that I mentioned in a previous segment. We might call these Albanian emperors due to the proximity of their origin with present day Albania, although this was only part of the territory called Illyria. In 305 to 306, there was confusion in the imperial succession and a civil war, the result of which would affect future history in a big way, with the rise of one of the most important emperors in the history of the world, named Constantine. But briefly, let us look at events at Antioch, Syria. Antioch was a city to which Hannibal had first fled from the Romans after his final defeat in 195 BC, according to Durant. Antioch, naturally, was where the first Christian manuscripts would be composed to spread all over the Greek speaking and Latin speaking world. The Old Latin Bible was thought to be first transcribed here, as were the documents that formed the basis of the Syriac Peshitta. Although some disagree, most of the writers I've read refer to the early church leaders from Antioch as hyperliteralists. An online source has this to say: Antioch gave its name to a certain school of Christian thought, distinguished by little interpretation of the scriptures, in contrast to the allegorical interpretation which found its greatest expression at Alexandria. And the authority of the Bible, what we have today, can be underscored by many of the manuscripts written from or around Antioch and written in Syriac. For instance, an early church leader named Tatian wrote a harmonization of the Gospels called the Diatessaron, a harmonization of the Gospels with regard to the timing of events in the middle of the second century. Such verses as Luke 2:33 and Joseph and his mother marveled at those things which are spoken of him are reinforced by the fact that they could not have been later glosses or additions, as they were quoted and known early on, both in the earliest versions of the Bible and in the writings of the early church leaders. Such, quote, controversial passages as Mark 16:9 to 20 and 1 John 5:7 to 8 are found in the Old Latin and are quoted or alluded to in every century of the early Christian era by teachers and preachers. Although faith does not require us nor permit us to search for relics or affirmation from historical sources to bolster it or justify it, or it is not faith. These facts of evidence, even though hotly contested by Catholic scholars and Protestant scholars like Norman Geisler, who received their highest degrees from Catholic institutions of higher learning, reveal the clear line of the true Christian manuscripts, ascending from Jerusalem to Antioch and spreading from east to west over the entire Roman Empire. Modern liberal scholars label this the Byzantine text, and it is the foundation for our Bible, represented by all but around 40 to 44 of the 5,200 available manuscripts in Greek. For instance, of the 620 uncial, large script-like capital letters manuscripts that contain the Gospel of Mark, only two manuscripts, Codex Vaticanus and Codex Sinaiticus, closely associated with Alexandria and Rome, do not contain this ending, and it is quoted and alluded to by early church leaders in versions in every century of the early Christian era. The early church had to deal with a great many heresies, and we'll discuss some of these tomorrow, the next time, and then we'll come back to the emperors and the founding of Rome as the state religion of Rome, or Christianity as the state religion of Rome. So I look forward to talking to you, and I hope you don't have to agree with me. Don't have to agree with me at all. Just dig into history and find out for yourself what you believe.